Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this evening for a very special virtual event put on by Louisiana Public Broadcasting in partnership with the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame in Natchitoches, Louisiana. My name is Ro Brown, and for the next hour, we will explore, if you will, the philanthropic and humanitarian legacy of the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali. And we'll talk about something very important to the greatest of all time, and that's athletes giving back. And we have a very special group of people to talk to today who could lend us lots of information about the greatest of all time and athletes giving back and community service. First up, I met this guy over 40 years ago when I had black hair and he had black hair, and I had a few less pounds around the belly, and so did he. And he was also the member of what I think is still the best college baseball infield I've ever seen defensively. He is, of course, most people know him as the head baseball coach at LSU, one College World Series championship, 5 College World Series appearances, 6 SEC tournament titles. Coach Paul Mainieri in retirement. Thank you for joining us on this evening, sir.
Bro, good to be with you. I can't believe that you remembered me as a ball player, though.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Ivan Bloomberg, founding CEO of Athletes for Hope and strategic advisor right now. And this organization started in 2007, so he'll be telling us about that, all about that. And one of the founding members of this, a group of athletes who had community service on their minds, people like Jackie Joyner-Kersee, Alonzo Mourning, Mia Hamm, Jeff Gordon, and of course, yes, the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali. Ivan, thank you for joining us on this evening, sir.
Pleasure, Rob. Nice to be here.
And the Southern University soccer coach, women's soccer coach, Coach Jeremy Fontenot, been on the job 7 years, has been in the SWAC tournament every year since 2017, and someone I think who can give us firsthand information about Athletes for Hope. Coach Fontenot, thank you for joining us, sir. And Miss Jeannie Conkey, who is public relations, in charge of public relations at the Muhammad Ali Center in Louisville, Kentucky. And, I took it upon myself to tell her, I think one of her jobs is, which she does every day, and she's been doing for over 20 years, telling people about the Muhammad Ali Center in Louisville, Kentucky. Ms. Conkey, thank you for joining us. Okay, let's work our way back. Each individual, give me your Muhammad Ali story or remembrance. I'm sure some of you have more than one. You didn't have to meet Muhammad Ali to have a Muhammad Ali remembrance. Let's start with Coach Mainieri.
Okay, Ro. Well, of course, I'm going to give away my age at 64 years old. So I was, a young man growing up in Miami, Florida during the 60s. When Muhammad Ali, of course, came onto the scene. In fact, I believe he beat Sonny Liston down in Miami at the Miami Beach Convention Center, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
When I was just a youngster. And obviously, you couldn't help but admire Muhammad Ali for his tremendous athletic ability, his self-confidence, his just amazing talent to go with the personality. But I didn't ever think I'd ever meet him or get a chance to know him at all. And when I was in my early 20s and I had just been released from professional baseball and I was starting my coaching career, and I was a high school baseball coach at the time, actually an assistant high school baseball coach. The head coach was a fellow by the name of Jim Hendry, who later on became the general manager of the Chicago Cubs and remained in that position for almost 10 years. Everybody remembers the Bartman game when the left fielder, Moises Alou, was making a catch and about ready to send the Cubs to the World Series. Well, I was sitting next to Jim Hendry, the general manager of the Cubs, in his box when that happened. So Jim became my best friend. But the reason I bring him up is because when we were in our early 20s coaching high school baseball together, and Jim was just a single young guy with a small apartment, he had this enormous painting of Muhammad Ali in his living room above his couch. So every time I'd go over to visit him at his apartment, I had the greatest one staring at me all the time. And Jim Hendry just loved Muhammad Ali. And so I really started to learn a lot about him because of my best friend's admiration and being such a big fan. And many years later, I became the coach at the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. And Muhammad lived in southern Michigan, and South Bend, Indiana was on the northern Indiana border, bordering the state of Michigan. And they had a what do you call it, a premiere, I guess, or something to that effect, of the movie about Muhammad Ali in one of the movie theaters in South Bend, Indiana. And I was invited to this event. And lo and behold, who walked into the theater but the greatest of all time? And it wasn't at the very end of his life, but he was, getting close to it, and he was suffering from Parkinson's and so forth. But I had an opportunity to meet him. I was one of 8 million people that he's met in his lifetime, but I got a chance to shake his hand and tell him, how much, I admired him and his career and so forth. So not a great story about it, but I count myself as one of the lucky ones that got a chance to meet him at one point in my life.
It's your remembrance. Ivan Bloomberg of Athletes of Hope. I'm sure you have your remembrance of Ali.
Thank you, Ro. Nice to see everybody. I think the two athletes that have had the biggest influence on my life have been Arthur Ashe and Muhammad Ali. I had the great honor to represent Arthur Ashe, and I certainly count the champ as a friend and a supporter of what we've done over the years. Athletes for Hope is the largest sports philanthropy organization in the country. We have over 8,000 athletes in 25 different sports. And at the foundation of what we do is workshops. We travel around the country and we do workshops for professional Olympic and collegiate teams, including the incredible LSU baseball team that the coach has done an amazing job of over the years. And in the first 5 years of Athletes for Hope, as I would travel around the country and do these workshops, Muhammad Ali came with me. And we'd walk in and do workshops together. Coach, you'll appreciate this. A lot of it was during spring training in Arizona because he had a home there, and we could knock out 4 or 5 different workshops over a couple of day period. We did workshops for NBA teams, the Milwaukee Bucks being the first one. We did a bunch of Major League Baseball teams, Cincinnati Reds, San Diego Chargers, San Francisco Giants, Oakland Athletics. And in every one of those situations, the teams gave us a limit of 45 minutes. They were in the middle of spring training. They were on a time constraint. They had to get to practice. And in every one of those situations, the athletes did not know that I was going to show up with the champ. And so we would walk into a room and, every time it blew me away, the reaction that some of the greatest athletes in the world had when Muhammad Ali walked into a room. And appreciate, guys, that his Parkinson's even then was pretty bad. And so he didn't say a word, but his presence spoke volumes. They knew what he had done in his life. They knew the sacrifices he had made, giving up maybe the 3 most important years of his career to stand up and take a position against a war that he didn't believe in. He used his celebrity to make a difference. And he set a standard for how athletes at all levels could do that. At the end of every single one of those workshops, every single athlete stood in line politely and waited their turn to have a picture taken with the champ. And he sat there with a smile or a fist. He liked to sort of pretend that he was going to punch you. He and I used to spar a lot. I boxed growing up, and so we had fun with that. So my memory was really watching. I might as well have been a potted plant in the room because his presence just said it all. And so I watched the influence he had, and I believe all of those athletes over the years have now been telling their families and their kids and their grandkids about that experience.
I mean, I understand. I know what you mean. I was around him at a period in time when he really couldn't talk, and it was amazing because he still controlled the room. He's the
Yeah.
only person I've ever seen who could control a room without saying anything. Coach Jeremy Fontenot, Southern University. Muhammad Ali, your remembrance. What sticks out with you in your life?
Mostly that stick out with me is his movies. I think his last fight was 4 years before I was born. So I never got a chance to see a fight live, but I mean, the movies, the videos and things like that. I'm So Pretty, videos, things like that. That was mostly my biggest memories of him and everything. Being the activist and everything during the time as he's been that athlete was always great to see and motivating for us. When I say us, people my age and everything. So that's some of the things that I looked at coming up was how can I be in the sports and be an activist around our community too.
Jeannie Conkey of the Muhammad Ali Center. What about you?
So first I want to tell you a little bit about the Ali Center because the first time I met Muhammad was when we were unveiling the building plans. We are located in Louisville, Kentucky, which is Muhammad Ali and Lonnie Ali's hometown. We're a very large building, about 100,000 square feet. We're an education and cultural center, which also has an award-winning museum experience. So when Lonnie and Muhammad founded the Ali Center in 2005, all of the planning, they wanted it to be a place that would really carry on Muhammad's legacy for years, not a place of artifacts so much, but a lot of film and interactivity, you know, for something for people of all ages. And we're a learning center. We have a lot of youth programs. We have an annual Muhammad Ali Humanitarian Awards. We have an Ali Festival, which celebrates the anniversary of Muhammad's passing, and just a lot of other programs and private events. And there's always something going on a lot. So the first time I met Muhammad was in April of 2002. And I had just started 2 months before, maybe not even that. And we were planning a press conference to announce the new building plans. And, you know, at that time, I really didn't know much about Muhammad. Over the years, I've come to know a lot. But so he walked into the press conference and, you know, I was surprised at first, like how big he really was. He's very broad shoulders, and you know, he just didn't say anything. And then, you know, the press conference went well, and I was standing there talking to people, and all of a sudden I heard, like, I thought it was a bug behind me. I don't know if any of you have, Ivan, if you've ever seen when Muhammad, he comes behind you and he would snap his finger, and it was like, it's just jarring. But that was the first time I met him. And then of course, over the years, he was still with us when we were open, and he would come into the center exhibits many times. And most of the time it was unannounced, and he would come in, and there were just a couple places that he really would want to go to first. One was our orientation theater. Another was our spirituality exhibit. And the third place was this interactive area where you can watch 15 of Muhammad's most famous fights, and you can call them up, and there's, you know, not every round is on, you know, each reel, but it's the most popular, most active rounds. And so Muhammad would just sit there. He loved to watch himself box. He loved to just, you know, but every time he would get into it, within like maybe 5 minutes, everyone in the whole center would know that he was in the building. I do not know how the word got around so quickly, but so Muhammad, and just as, you know, you described, Ivan, he would sit there, he would, you know, pose for pictures. He would, you know, in the earlier days, he would do autographs, and he would just spend time with everyone who wanted to spend time with him. He was just a very unusual heart, and he demonstrated his caring spirit to really everyone he met.
Yeah, Tina, it's interesting you would say that because when later in his life, when speaking was difficult, he turned to magic, and he loved. And so I had the great honor to be on Andre Agassi's foundation board, and Champ came and just popped into a board meeting, and the board meeting was at Agassi Prep, which is the school that Andre founded in Las Vegas, in a really tough part of Vegas. And he came in and sort of did a few tricks and was getting ready to leave. And he was like, look, I'm in a school. I want to see the kids. I want to meet with children. Right. And so we walked him unannounced into a classroom of, 30 African-American 12-year-olds. And, on the wall in that classroom was two pictures, a picture of Muhammad Ali and a picture of Martin Luther King. And all of a sudden these kids are like, oh my God, this is the person that's on my wall. And he proceeded to spend 15 minutes doing magic tricks for a bunch of kids. He just captured the room and, made a difference in those kids' lives.
Guys, the Ali Spinks fight in New Orleans, when I mentioned the public workouts they had at the Municipal Auditorium 2 weeks before the fight, I saw this every day after he would work out. He'd put on that white terry cloth robe. They set up a chair on a podium, and he'd just sit there, and the line was outside the auditorium and around, signing autographs, taking pictures with people. He did that for about an hour or hour and a half every day after those workouts. If you're seeing us, you're lucky enough to be on a virtual event, thanks to Louisiana Public Broadcasting and the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame in Natchitoches, Louisiana. And we're talking about what else? Muhammad Ali, athletes, activism, and philanthropy, and the whole work. So moving along, I want to get to young people, young athletes. And you don't have to be a star athlete, and you don't have to be rich. I got two coaches here, one college coach, and you're still a coach, Paul. I still consider you a coach. You're always a coach. Once a coach, always a coach. How do you get your young athletes of today to think about community service? Coach Fontenot, you want to go first?
It's at a point right now for us. My young ladies, they want to get out there. We read books at schools for the kids. They actually, from Athletes of Hope, they actually get more calls to go do events than I'm as a head coach to get the calls. So, and then it's, to me, again, it's social media. When they see other people doing it, they just want to do it. So I think it's not as hard as it seems for my young ladies. That's something they love to do.
Right. Mm-hmm. Coach Maneri.
Bro, as I was working my way through my coaching career, which I just retired, in June after 39 years, I worked at a very small school in Miami. I worked at the United States Air Force Academy. I worked at Notre Dame. Great institutions, but the sport of college baseball was not a huge popular sport in the communities where we coached. I used to hope that someday I could coach at a school where college baseball was really important to that university and to that community. Well, of course, I got my wish when Skip Bertman reached out to me as the athletic director, greatest baseball coach, college baseball coach of all time. And now he's the athletic director, and he reaches out to me at Notre Dame and wants me to become the coach at LSU. And the thing that attracted me to the job, besides, the idea that we could win and win championships, with the history and tradition of the program, was that maybe as the baseball coach of the program, I could have, not for ego reasons, but enough status in the community that you could go out and help people. One of my great mentors in my lifetime was the great manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, Tommy Lasorda. He is actually the godfather of my youngest child. And I spent an awful lot of time with Tommy. And much like Muhammad Ali, he was a man of the people, and he would want to go out and impact other people's lives in a very positive way. I don't ever remember Tommy turning down an invitation to go speak or to go into the community and be around people. So when I got this job at LSU, personally, I thought it was a very big part of my job was to go out into the community and do things for people. A lot of people used to kid me, that I could never say no to anybody, but I didn't want to say no. I was so grateful to have the position and the profile in the community where I could go do things for others, So as I would recruit for 15 years to LSU, I would tell our recruits that our program would sit on 3 pillars that would make the foundation of our program. Obviously, the first one was to become the best baseball player that you could become. You are blessed with this God-given talent and athleticism. Now we want you to develop that talent to its fullest. The second pillar, of course, was getting a great education and leaving LSU with a college degree so that you could go out and support a family and make contributions to society. But equally, the third pillar, as I would tell every recruit that would sit in my office, is we want you to be appreciative of the idea that you are recruited to LSU, that you are one of the chosen ones, that we want you to join a great college baseball program, one of the richest traditions in all of the country. Well, that is going to give you a certain status in this community, as it did me as the coach. And I believe that it is your responsibility to take this platform that you have now, where you can influence and impact other individuals by going out and simply giving your time. Just give your time, that's all. While your classmates are sleeping in on Saturday mornings, after whatever they were doing Friday night, you're going to get out of bed and go out and see people, help with walks to bring awareness to certain causes, go out and put on free baseball clinics for kids, and just whatever it takes. And I would tell them, Ro, that you're going to feel as though you're making the sacrifice to go out and help others. But the reality is you're going to get much more from it than you gave. The sense of feeling good about yourself, that you helped other people, you can't quantify that impact that it has on your own life. And so our players, much like Jeremy just talked about his soccer girls, our players they want to go out into the community because it made them feel better about themselves. And it showed how grateful they were to have the opportunity to be at a great university and to be an athlete that was, one of the few people in the world that get to experience being a collegiate athlete. And I never had hardly any trouble convincing those kids, but what I would get back from them was how glad they were that they did it, because they gained so much from the experience.
Before we go a little any further, I want to let people know you can ask questions. Just type them in the chat box. You can ask questions, and we'll try to get to them near the end of this virtual event. Ivan, Ms. Conkey, piggyback on what Coach Manieri and what Coach Fontenot said. I am old enough to where, to me, community involvement, activism, and giving time was what athletes did. Okay, and I think we went through a period where athletes stopped doing that. I have my own ideas of why that stopped, but I think it started again. What do you think? Why did it stop? And I'm sure we're glad that it's all back. Ivan, want to go first?
Sure. I don't think it stopped. I think that there's some foundational education that goes behind it that's necessary. The fact that we have Jeremy and Paul here in Baton Rouge is so heartwarming for me. The first community that we built our Athletes for Hope University program was in Baton Rouge, and through the generous support of the Pennington Family Foundation and Skip Burtman, we were introduced to LSU, and the very first workshop we ever did was for Paul's team on the baseball field, driving down Skip Bertman Way to get to that stadium. And he said some very interesting things. We do an exercise that asks the athletes. It says, all college athletes have an obligation to give back to their communities, and you can agree and you can disagree. And some people will say it's my way of playing this forward. And some other athletes, and particularly NBA players, will say, I shouldn't feel obligated to do anything. If I want to do it, I should do it for the right reasons. And then we change the word from obligation to responsibility, which was Paul's word. And we'll say all athletes have a responsibility. And then we'll replace responsibility with opportunity. And it says all athletes have a responsibility or an opportunity. And then everybody agrees that they have this opportunity. It's in the palm of their hand, right? They have this stature, this opportunity to make a difference. What they want to do with it is up to them. The second component is sort of passion and self-choice. We want the athletes to do what they're interested in doing. What we've learned over 15 years is if a coach or an athletic director or a general manager at the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball level tells athletes they need to go out and do community service work, they're less likely to do it for the right reasons. If they get the choice to pick the causes that they're interested in, their heart's in it. They do it for the right reasons. They get up on that Saturday morning, Paul, and they walk because they chose to do it, right? The secret sauce also is that when they come home after that walk, they feel good about themselves. They feel like they did a good thing for others, and they also feel good about themselves. And then the last point I'll make, and this is important, we started at LSU, and the program was up and running for about a year. And I'll remember it like it was yesterday. I got a phone call from Warwick Dunn, who's one of our founding athletes, an incredible person, NFL Player of the Year multiple times, founded a amazing foundation called Homes for the Holidays, where he named after his mom, who really never had the opportunity to own her own home. And anyway, he called me and he said, look, love Athletes for Hope, but I don't understand. You're at LSU, you're in Baton Rouge. Why aren't you at Southern University? It's not okay. And one thing led to another. And about 6 months later, we opened up a program at Southern. And those student athletes have been some of the most engaged, amazing, particularly the women, I must say, and the women's soccer players are prime examples of that, where they'll do anything that's put in front of them if it's going to help make others' lives. They know what they've been through, and they want to take their own life experience and turn it around and use it to give back to others. So, I spent a lot of time thinking that professional athletes, as I represented them for 15 years, were the ultimate role models. And when you think about it, the student athletes, the ones that are getting great educations, making a difference on the field, and going out into communities and making a difference, really as a parent may be the best role model possible.
Shout out to Coach Fontenot while he's sitting right there. Coach, how do you do it?
Like I say, it's real easy. I mean, it's Athlete Hope is great. Hope is great for us, man. To be exact, that we don't have to go look for the work, especially on these events as the Martin Luther King event, back to school events. We don't have to go look out for that. I mean, I think last weekend I was in a tough position trying to find an event. I think they had changed a lot of things up, especially with COVID. Some of the events was early, and I think my girl didn't come in until Sunday. So I reached out to Miss Hollins, that work out there, and she was like, Coach, we really don't have nothing, but what do you think about the girls cooking? I was like, I don't know, man. We don't know we could do that. So I reached out to them in our group message, and man, the excitement that they bought doing it was great. So I told them, this is what we're gonna do. I take care of the meat, and they do all the sides and everything. When we met up, they was in line to serve it and get ready to bring it out. So we bought, I think, 36 to 40 plates out to a needed home. And like I say, the girls enjoyed that. So those type of things, like they say, it's not hard to get young ladies to do it, because it's something that they want to do and everything. And I believe in that. I think when I first started in 2016, that's when the Great Flood of Baton Rouge had happened. and brought the girls to my old high school to help clean up over there and everything. And for them to actually do it with no complaints, that's when I felt that it was something that we was going to keep on doing. Then the next, I think the next couple of days, they brought people inside of the mini dome on campus, and the kids over there, they was not doing nothing. They sitting there moping around because they don't have nowhere to stay at that moment. And we get to go to the dorm rooms, go to our house and apartments and everything. So one of the girls came to me and said, Coach, I don't want to be rude or anything about missing practice. We in two-a-days at that moment. So I don't want to be rude about missing practice, but can we take a time to actually just go play with the kids for a minute? And that left me up to go just ask the people that, I think that was Red Cross that was over. And we took all the kids outside for about an hour for the next couple of weeks while they was in there, and just threw the football with them, jump rope with them, play games with them and things like that. So it was something in my heart that I had to keep on going each and every year.
Mhm.
Ro, could I make a comment, Ro?
Sure.
Just kind of a reaction to what Ivan said about student athletes being such great role models for these kids. You know, and these are, you know, these kids, these college athletes, they're getting an education. That's what they're in college. Is a big part of what they're doing is getting their education. Education can be learned in different ways. It can be learned in the classroom. It can be on a degree, but you also learn a way of life. And so what Ivan said about being a student athlete, and that's a time when they are role models, but it carries on into their life after they leave college as well. And those are the lessons that they've learned while they're in college, to learn to give to others that are less fortunate than them, to be grateful for the things that they have in their own life, and to realize how blessed they are to have them. I would tell our players all the time, all you have to do is look over your shoulder and you're going to find people that are less fortunate than you. Be grateful for what you have and go out and show that gratefulness by helping other people. Well, if you look just a little bit to the west over in Houston, and there's a former LSU baseball player by the name of Alex Bregman, who was a great ball player for us at LSU. He was the Houston Astros nominee for the Roberto Clemente Award, which is given to the one player from each major league team, and then there's the major winner, overall winner. But Roberto Clemente was my favorite athlete, along with Arthur Ashe growing up. It's funny, Ivan, I know you represented Arthur Ashe, but Roberto Clemente and Arthur Ashe were my two favorite athletes when I was growing up in the 60s. And everybody knows the story of Roberto Clemente. Managua, Nicaragua had a terrible earthquake. He was flying down there to help people by bringing supplies when his plane crashed, and his body was never found, and his life was over. And he was, you know, like Muhammad Ali for me, a person that helped others, really gave his life at the end. And for Alex Bregman to be the Houston Astros nominee for the Roberto Clemente Award, that's something that we at LSU took an amazing amount of pride in, because I know Alex, during his time at LSU, was one of those people that was more than willing, wanted to go out into the community and help others. And now what he is doing in Houston is making a difference in a lot of people's lives, besides being the great ball player that he is. And I like to think that he learned that idea of giving to others that are less fortunate. He might have learned those lessons while he was a student athlete at LSU.
I would say that Muhammad was one of the original athletes to really use his platform as an athlete for good. Like, I think he knew very, very, very early on in his life that he was going to do that. And there's, you know, Muhammad has enriched us with so many quotes. One of them was, now my life is really starting. Using this face, the world knows so well, to fight injustice, fighting racism, fighting illiteracy, fighting poverty, using this face to go out and fight for the truth. And I think that, your earliest question, reeling back about 10 minutes ago, and Ivan responded, I don't think that it has gone away, but I believe that, when Muhammad was an athlete in his younger years, there wasn't social media, and, Muhammad used his voice, and he used it loudly, which is why I guess I call him the Louisville Lip. But today, there has been, a comeback in athletes in giving back. And I think a lot of that is through social media. And I just think your stories, coaches, are just so inspiring to me.
Mhm. That's Jeannie Conkey of the Muhammad Ali Center, Paul Maneri, legendary college baseball coach, Ivan Blumberg of Athletes for Action, and Jeremy Fontenot, women's soccer coach at Southern University on the Bluff. And we're talking about Muhammad Ali, athletes and philanthropy and activism. Thanks to Louisiana Public Broadcasting and the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. Ms. Conkey, if I go to the center, I know I'm going to see the 2 Liston fights. I know I'm going to see the 3 Frazier fights. I'll probably see some memorabilia. What will I see when I go there that tells me that Muhammad Ali was a philanthropist and activist? Because for me, they kind of go hand in hand in a lot of ways. What would I see?
Sure. Well, first of all, we organize our exhibits around Muhammad's 6 core principles. That in itself really illustrates that Muhammad was much more than a boxer. And those principles are confidence, conviction, dedication, respect, giving, and spirituality. The exhibits are very interactive. There's a lot of film. You can walk through the civil rights era. You can see an exhibit called Lighting the Way, which on the outside of the exhibit has the torch that Muhammad carried at the 1996 Olympics. And for those those of us who are old enough to remember, it was like such a wow moment that Muhammad Ali was coming out in 1996 after being diagnosed with Parkinson's syndrome and then Parkinson's disease like 15 years before, and really wasn't in the spotlight that often. And he came out so courageously holding that torch. So in this exhibit called Lighting the Way, there's a beautiful film that uses that sort of as the hook, but the message is larger than that. It is that all of us can be personally great in our own lives. You can do things in your community. You can do things, with your friends and your relatives and your other families. There is also an area beyond that where visitors can go into little story booths and they can record either what they're fighting for in the world. They can record what their red bike moment is, which is a transformational moment in one's life, that it's that, should I take this road or that road? And you take that road. And that's what happened to Muhammad Ali when he was 12 years old. And that's how he started boxing. So there's a lot of the footage, like in spirituality. It's really like, I say that walking through our exhibits is the closest thing to really going through Muhammad Ali's circulatory system. I remember when he passed away, we call this week between his passing and his funeral Ali Week, because it was a celebration and a convening really of the world who came to Louisville, Kentucky for an entire week to pay their respects to Muhammad. And with all of these fans and friends and family came a lot of media. And I, at one point, was going through the exhibits with it's a producer, I believe, from NBC. And it struck me all of a sudden that you could hear Muhammad's voice all over the exhibits, but he was gone. And we both kind of just were stunned that we had both had that reaction at the same time. And I don't think, well, maybe some people do. I'm not, I'm not a coach like you, and but having someone, Muhammad was larger than life, and I know that our exhibits and the reaction of people going through the exhibits is not what they expect when they walk out of the exhibits.
Mhm. Ivan, you mentioned that you represented Arthur Ashe. So you had close communications with, perhaps two of the most, activists and philanthropic athletes of the last century. Compare the two.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'll send you an article I wrote that I wrote literally upon Muhammad's passing that did exactly that. It compared the two, and if you sat in my office, you'd have three pictures. The one in the middle says, "All that is necessary for the forces of evil to prevail in the world is for enough good men or women to do nothing."
Mm-hmm.
To the right is a picture of Muhammad Ali with my son when we launched Athletes for Hope, and to the left is a picture of Muhammad Ali. Of Arthur Ashe, and with a note that talked about how much he appreciated the difference that we were making together. When Arthur Ashe was diagnosed with a heart ailment and then ultimately with AIDS, there were about 8 of us in the world that knew about it. And when it was going to become public, he flew from New York to my office in Washington. He walked in the door and he said, "Look, I wanted to keep this private, but now that it's going to become public, we need to find a way to use what's happening to me to make a difference for those that are dealing with AIDS." He also knew that he didn't know how. And so we surrounded ourselves with a lot of people. We went to the USTA. They agreed to create an Arthur Ashe Day the day before the US Open. NBC agreed to televise it. I was representing a lot of the players. They agreed to participate and play. Before we knew it, we had 6 million people in their living rooms, 21,000 people in a stadium. And it wasn't about tennis. It was about a cause. And it was about an athlete that was willing to use their platform to make a difference. He died 6 months later, but if you went to that stadium today, it's Arthur Ashe Stadium, right? The stadium at Flushing Meadows where the US Open is played will remember him forever. And for those of you that have never had the opportunity, take Jeannie at her word, go to the Muhammad Ali Center, spend the time, take a class of kids. It's not a museum, it's an experience. And you walk through it. And at the end of that hour and a half or 2 hours, you feel like you took a journey and you learned about the pillars that influenced the greatest of all time's life. And there is a boxing ring in there, but it's not about the boxing as much as it is what he went through in his life. And I believe, and I'm interested, Rowan, your comment about you're not seeing as much anymore. I have a very different perspective. I think that athletes have become activists. I think athletes have been given the freedom and the power to stand up and take a position about things they believe in. If you think about equality, if you think about Black Lives Matters, if you think about what's happening now with mental health, where Athletes for Hope has an incredible program around mental health, where athletes are saying it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to get help, and if I, as a famous athlete, can expose myself to those vulnerabilities, so can you. I think that Muhammad Ali set the standard. We call him the godfather of Athletes for Hope because not only was he the most famous, but he's the guy that set sort of the rules that said, you know what, you have this opportunity, get out there and do it. And I think Muhammad and Arthur were the two prime examples, and lots of athletes, famous or otherwise, right? One of the exercises we do talks about, do you need to be a famous athlete to make a difference? And the answer is no. The answer is if you roll up your sleeves and you drill deeper, every one of those college kids at Southern or LSU or anywhere else, the offensive and defensive linemen on the NFL teams that aren't getting all the celebrity status, they can make a difference because when they work with kids to set an example, those kids are going to follow their lead. And to Coach's point, the education that they're going to learn, most of them are never going to go on to be professional athletes, right? They're going to be doctors, lawyers, teachers, whatever they're going to do. They are in a position to give back, and they can take that skill set and influence others for the rest of their lives.
Mhm. Ivan, let me clarify. I don't believe that I believe it started again where young athletes are being activists. But I do believe that between Muhammad Ali, there was a period where athletes wanted to shut up and dribble. They wanted to be like Mike.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's what Mike did. Okay, shut up and dribble and make lots of money. And I do think that particular time we went through that. I'm very happy that I think it's almost like, when I was a child of the 60s and everything, where athletes are thinking about other things now and are making a difference or differences in their communities. We talked about this. We mentioned this a little bit earlier. I don't remember who said this, who may have come up with this, but athletes are, we've heard this a few times, come to think of it. Athletes are so important in the psyche of young people. That's the best way I could put it. As far as, and they just have a tremendous amount of influence. And, I thought about this on the way here, and Coach, you may be able to talk about this. How will NIL, or can NIL, name, image, and likeness, affect college athletes as far as, for lack of a better word, philanthropy, because they'll have money that they didn't have. Have you thought about that?
You're asking me or Jeremy? Yeah, okay. Well, the NIL situation, there's a wide range of opinions about that, Ro, in all honesty, okay?
Yeah.
And I worry a little bit that with what comes with the NIL is a little bit of a sense of entitlement by the players, by the student athletes.
Yeah.
And I worry about that, because what we're talking about today is trying to counter a lot of the attitude of society now, which is in many ways a me society. People are only concerned with their own little world. And if the NIL system proves out to be another avenue for our athletes to put out a good message and to impact the world in a positive way, not just with their own financial giving, Ro. I don't know if they'll do that. Most of them are not going to be making that kind of money.
Yeah.
But at least by using their name, image, and likeness to not only make a little bit of money for themselves, but to use that platform to go out there, then I think it becomes a very positive thing.
Right.
The concern is that if there are athletes out there that are just saying, I just want to get mine that I should be getting, then it's counterproductive to what we're all discussing tonight, which is to help those that are less privileged than they are. And let me just say this last comment. It's maybe not about the NIL, but our time on earth is very short when you think about it. Okay. And I don't mean to sound morbid about this, but I was a baseball coach for 39 years, and I'm very proud of that. I was the luckiest guy in the world to be able to do what I wanted to do. Okay. But I'm not a baseball coach anymore, officially. Okay. How am I going to be remembered? Am I going to be remembered for wins and losses and championships? Or am I going to be remembered as a person of the community, that people remember that he went out and tried to help other people? And he continues to try to do that. That to me is so much more important than any statistics, than how many goals you scored, what you hit it for a batting average, how many wins you had as a coach. make your community a better place. That's the legacy that you want to leave. And I'm so proud that you all asked me to be a part of this, because that's the message I want to send to any athlete that's watching this show tonight. What do you want written on your tombstone? You know, there's a poem called The Dash, written by a lady named Linda Ellis. And I'm not going to read the whole poem or tell you the whole poem, but the dash is go on your tombstone is between the year you were born and the year you died. And really the most important thing is the dash, because it's how did you live your life? How is the world a better place for you having been in it? And that's how people are going to remember you, not just how many hoops you made or how many passes you completed or caught for touchdowns or anything else. Did you make the world a better place? This is your opportunity to do it as an athlete with that platform.
It's a virtual event presented to you by Louisiana Public Broadcasting and the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame in Natchitoches, Louisiana. And we are talking about the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali, not what he did in the ring, but out of the ring, his philanthropic efforts and his humanitarian efforts. And we have a very, very, very special panel here talking about this. Okay, we got about 6 minutes left. Each one of you, closing comment. And I'm one of those athletes sitting watching this right now, and I'm a sophomore or whatever. Or let's just say, Coach Maneri, you know, I am a football player who, you know, I get maybe $30,000 from NIL or something, okay, or whatever. What do you say to them? Let's give us a closing comment, thinking about Muhammad Ali and what he did. Mr. Bloomberg, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I'll say a couple things. First of all, I really want to commend what Paul just said. I think it was just literally spot on.
Yep.
So I think maybe we're just old, and you know, as we get old, and we're able to look back and realize what's most important. And I think he spoke from his heart. And guys on vacation playing golf, and this is probably the most important hour of his week. And so I just personally want him to know I appreciate that. You know, the NIL situation is interesting. It's evolving. It's literally happening right in front of our eyes. It's going to change a lot over the next 3 to 5 years as the NCAA figures it out. I think it's important to distinguish it completely from what we're talking about here. And you know, we have a policy at Athletes for Hope that says we will never ever pay an athlete to do community service. It's not going to happen, and the opportunities present themselves all the time, and there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is that we want them to be doing the service that they want to do from their heart. We want them to do it for the right reason. We want them to be passionate about what they pursue. And you know, the lessons that you learn through an Athletes for Hope workshop, whether it's that you have this opportunity to make a difference, whether it's that you don't need to be famous to make a difference, and then the last one is that, you know, there's tremendous value to your time, that you don't need to write a check to make a difference. Those takeaways apply to everyone, and whether you're an athlete listening tonight, young or old, or whether you're a sports fan and enjoy, you know, tuning into sports or playing recreational sports, you have the opportunity to take those same learnings and apply them to your own lives, to figure out what you are personally passionate about. Follow the lead that Muhammad Ali laid out. You know, he said that, you know, the rent we pay to be on earth is to give back to others. Think about that, right? That's what he stood for, and he actually acted it out in his life. I think he would be proud that that message has resonated with millions and millions of people during his lifetime, and after his passing.
Coach Fontenot, closing comment from you about the great one, Muhammad Ali, and his philanthropic endeavors.
Like I said earlier, his activists and actually things that he showed as I look back at his memories and things like, and one thing I always know is that his championship in the rings will always be replaced when you see another person come up. I can forget the man. He said young boxer was ranked number 4. He was at that moment was ranked number 1, and he was saying that he was about to retire. Foreman was number 2, and I think he said he was gaining weight, so he can lose anytime. And I forgot who was number 3 at that moment, but he was speaking about him being replaced and everything. And I always look back and say that community service can never be replaced. But your championship, the personality in the ring, in the on the baseball field, soccer field, and things like that can always be replaced. Michael Jordan was, we always say, replaced by Kobe. Kobe replaced by LeBron and things like that. But what LeBron does right now outside in the community will never be replaced. So always remember that.
Yep, only about 1 minute left. Ms. Conkey, anything you want to close with quickly?
Well, on Muhammad's grave, it is engraved, service to others is the rent you pay for your room in heaven. And, I think we all have to ask ourselves, well, how did Muhammad pay his rent? Why was he one of the most impactful and famous people and most beloved people in the world? It wasn't just because he was a great athlete. It wasn't just because he was a cultural icon. It was because he was a great humanitarian and he treated everyone right. He looked to the underdogs and he cared about people one-on-one, and he made people feel really great. And I think that is the best part of his legacy.
Real quickly, just a few seconds left. Coach Maneri.
Hey, I've said enough. I'm not going to take up any more time. Everybody here is sending the same message, and I think it's wonderful that we celebrate Muhammad Ali. I think it's wonderful that we talked about Arthur Ashe tonight, who's one of the most underrated athletes in the history of the world, in my opinion, what he went through. I just think there's a lot of good in the world, and there's a lot of good people out there that are willing to help others, and it's going to make our world a better place.
Paul Maneri, Ivan Bloomberg, Jeremy Fontenot, and Jeannie Conkey. Thank you so much for joining us. You have been an outstanding panel, and we encourage all those who joined us to fill out the survey for tonight's event. And the link should be in the chat, and you can go to www.lpb.org/Ali. And you enter to win one of 5 door prizes, a copy of Ali, A Life, and a PBS Muhammad Ali poster. And don't forget, the Ken Burns 4-part docuseries airs again on LPB beginning next Friday night. That's January 28th. Next Friday night, January 28th on LPB, the Ken Burns 4-part docuseries airs once again. I am Ro Brown, and on behalf of Louisiana Public Broadcasting and the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame in Natchitoches, Louisiana, you got to go out and see that place too. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Colleen, John, Jonathan, for being my brains over the last hour and a half.